It's almost like if, say that you're colorblind and you've lived all your life colorblind, and then all of a sudden you're able to see not just color, but like the tiniest of details, the literal different shades of green of trees. Everything is stripped away in your life. What's left? And that was really the question that I had. And it's that question of who are you really? Not for TikTok, not for Instagram, not for YouTube, not for the photoshopped highlight reel that we've been given a lot of our life. So a lot of what I do is I say that I don't tell people what to think. I show them how to think. Because the thing is, having a gift and a skill can get you into a room, but it's the character and integrity you have that'll keep you in that room. Are we what we do, or are we something deeper than that?
Do you have your own podcast?
Yeah.
You
yeah.
do?
Yeah, I have
Okay.
my own podcast. Yeah, I started my podcast in 2018. And back then, because I grew up rapping. So rap was my thing. So I had the equipment.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, so I had the equipment. And we'll dive into that story a little later. But yeah, I had the equipment, and I just felt led to start podcasting because I felt like I could motivate and encourage people. And back then, it was literally me. It was audio only. It was me and a mic, and I would just share what I felt like I've learned through the Bible that was motivational to life that you could apply to life. Called it Motivational Mondays. Posted it every Monday.
Yeah.
And then from there, it grew.
Where did you post it at?
At first, I posted it on, I used Buzzsprout, which is just a platform that you host podcast on, and it distributed it everywhere. But then since then, I'm using Spotify for creators. I use that for the audio side, which is still video. And then my main focus is YouTube. So I've been on YouTube, and we just cleared 1,000 subscribers. Pretty happy about that. It's done. But we're making moves.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
that's been great. Yeah, because it's staying consistent. That's the main thing. Learning how you can improve and staying consistent.
How often?
I post weekly, so once a week. There was a span of time in July when I challenged myself. I was like, I need to record, edit, release a video a day for a whole month. So I did that 31 days straight.
Really?
Just to see if I could do that. Because when I'm not interviewing people, I do solo podcasts. So it's literally just me.
I was thinking of
And an
doing
idea.
that.
It's me with an idea, and I've seen it modeled, very scripted and very polished. Because when I worked for that ministry, she would do a weekly video podcast, and it was very like she had her teleprompter. We had 3 cameras. We literally had a full studio. It's so cool to be a part of. And when I started, I was like, how can I replicate that? So I went too big, too soon, and I was like trying to use the few cameras I had, and then that kind of crushed the dreams because I had a level of standard that I wasn't meeting, and I was like, what do I do? So I finally simplified it. But now, yeah, I use an app on my phone. I still use my phone to record.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I use an app. It's a teleprompter app, so I can see my teleprompter, and it picks up my voice. So it doesn't move until I say it. So then if I have a story, it'll stop. I could go off script and then come back to script. Yeah, dude, it's a fun party, and I could easily nerd out on that side of things for sure.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So how long, I guess, you grew up in a Christian family?
Yeah, so I like to say my families were Creasters. We went to church on Christmas and Easter. So I mean, we live in Texas, so the Bible Belt, like you go to church because it's what you do. It's not necessarily who you are.
Yeah.
So from early as I can remember, Christian faith was important to me, but it also was like just something we did. But then around 2011, 2012, just graduated high school then and went through an awful breakup. You know how that goes. Teen love, you think that your life is literally going to end. And a friend of mine invited me to a youth group, and I just graduated high school, so I wasn't even sure I was supposed to go. But he was still in high school, and I was like, sure, I'll go. And just that encounter with God literally changed my entire life. Those youth pastors now became senior pastors and planted the church we're at now in Caddo Mills. So I helped be a part of that plant, and that happened back in 2014. And I've just been literally a part of that church since then. And serving in some capacity, I've helped with youth. I ran sound. I played drums. I still play drums for our church. And dude, it's just been, faith's a big part of my life. But at first, it was one of those things we just did. We were like, okay, we go to church because we're supposed to. And then that shift happened when I experienced God and his love and a relationship with Jesus in a way that I'd never seen it before. And I was like, so this is what it means to be a disciple of Jesus.
So what happened on that day?
Yeah,
Or
so I went and it was a normal church service, I guess you could say. There was a full band, and I grew up Methodist, so it was like choir and very structured, very traditional. And just being a part of that experience, now I understand that it was literally God, the Spirit of God, speaking to me and moving me in that moment. And it was just such an interesting thing because before that, it was God felt so distant. It's like we talked to this big guy in the sky, right? But then in that moment, it's just I've never felt so close to God. And of course, now I felt even closer the more I've walked with Him and understood what it means to read our Bible and allow our Bible to read us. Because a lot of times when you're reading the Bible, you'll be like, this is literally what I'm going through. What are you talking about? And that's, yeah. So to answer your question in that moment, it's hard to describe in words, but there was a shift spiritually. It was like my eyes were open for the first time to this new reality. It's almost like if, say that you're colorblind and you've lived all your life colorblind, and then all of a sudden you're able to see not just color, but like the tiniest of details, the literal different shades of green of trees. You're like, wow, you mean there's this life and this is possible?
so just like something click.
Yeah, something just clicked.
Yeah. Interesting. And so what changed after that? What were you doing before?
The BC, before Christ, I'd like to say. I feel like I was somewhat of a good person, but I also was living in this space of a lot of my identity was in what I do. And a lot of my ability to get love, approval, acceptance was very self-driven, but also it was the awards that I can get. I played sports growing up. I performed in a few plays growing up when I was much smaller. A lot of the love and affection that I was longing for felt like it only could happen if I earned it,
Yeah.
if I performed my way to it. And in that moment, it shifted where it was like, it's much less about what we do, but who we are and whose we are, like who created us. And I was, and again, that was in 2012, 2011. And that journey started. And then from there, when I first started I started rapping in 2008. And when I first started rapping, it's because rap, hip hop music was like an escape for me. Like where maybe my parents are fighting over something, I could just put in those headphones and just leave. Like I could escape. I could transport myself to the world of Lil Wayne, Drake, Eminem, all those that were like on top of their game in that era. And I was like, maybe I could do this. So I started rapping then, and a lot of that rap then was just your usual. You're just regurgitating what you hear, rapping about women and cars and these things that I didn't have because I was literally a sophomore in high school, rapping about this stuff. And then as that shifted, as my faith shifted towards God, then of course my music started shifting. And I like to say too, when you first really encounter Jesus, and you accept Jesus in your heart and you start walking this life, it's not like you snap your fingers and you're instantly the saint. It's a process. And I feel, and I love the way that my pastor put it recently, is there's salvation and then there's sanctification. And sanctification is the working of our salvation, meaning it's the working of us becoming more like Jesus, becoming the best person that we can for ourselves, for others. And yeah, since the 2011, 2012, I started rapping for God, not necessarily to God or with God. So there was a bit of a shift there and still just continue to go on that journey. And then we got to 2018 and I was doing, again, way too much. And yes, my identity wasn't in what I do, but it still was in a way. And I just found a new way to find my worth and significance in what I was doing. It just now it was doing it for God. So it seemed like it was in a better place, but at its core, it was so much deeper than that. And in 2018, I felt like the Lord was saying, do you trust me enough to lay down the very thing that you've made your whole life, the very thing you've created into an idol? And I'm like, what do you mean, God? I thought I was supposed to be the Christian Little Wayne, Christian Eminem. What was you talking about? And that was a wrestle. That was a struggle because I built literally the last 10 years of my life thinking I was gonna win Grammys, be on tour, do all these things. And it's funny because even the last song that I released was probably my best performing from a standpoint of streams, and people enjoyed it. And it was like, wow, 350 songs later, I finally figured it out. And now I need to lay this down and give this up. And I was like, I guess so. I guess I'm going to trust you, God. And I did. And it was a challenging season. And I feel like it was such a unique space to realize if everything is stripped away in your life, what's left?
Mhm.
And that was really the question that I had. And it's that question of who are you really? Not for TikTok, not for Instagram, not for YouTube, not for the photoshopped highlight reel that we've been given a lot of our life, especially you're probably in the same era of generation as I was, where we were fed so much of that.
What
Well,
year were
it's
you born?
93.
90, I'm 89.
Okay,
So yeah,
you're a little
somewhere,
older,
yeah.
but closer. But you get it. We were in that space where you only put your best face forward.
Mhm.
And it was so interesting that when all that stripped away, what's left? And I think that's such an important thing that we should all ask ourselves, because if we're not careful, we can start living for the wrong things and living for whether it's to obtain wealth, which is great. I think being wealthy and successful is great. And when you get it, will you still be happy? And I feel like that's the question that a lot of people don't necessarily get to ask until they've spent a good portion of their life going after it and then realizing, oh no, well, what's next? And that could be applied to anything. You think of sports. If you're trying to make it to whatever league that is, or maybe you make it to college, and you achieve the goal. What changed? What's different? And it's funny. I even think of, as I've done the studies in this, is they've studied Olympic athletes that have won gold medals, and some of them are having the hardest time post winning than they did when they won, when they were going to win it. And it's like they built their whole life on a thing that they achieved, and now they're like, who are we now? And I feel like that's such an interesting place to park a conversation and look at, because I feel like most people don't see that till it's too late.
So, in the link that you sent me about yourself, there were some parts that were saying that you were talking about having the faith and talking about the faith, but also having tools of actual psychi
Modern psychology,
yeah, modern psychology and how to blend both. How does that work? And you
definitely. I love that you asked that. So I've been developing kind of my own framework of coaching and practicing through 5 steps that'll get you from the current mindset that's probably leaving you stuck or trapped to free, fulfilled, and living on purpose with purpose. And that 5 steps is recognize, reorganize, rediscover, rebuild, refine. And each of those steps take you through modern applied psychology, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And again, it's just a bunch of big fancy terms for literally looking at your life and looking at your mindset in a way that's is what I'm doing positive or negative? And if there's a negative mindset or a blind spot that I don't see, is this belief about myself, is it keeping me from who I'm supposed to be, or is it protecting me from potential danger? So a lot of times our minds, we hear limited beliefs all the time. Like people throw that out all the time. And it's not necessarily a limited belief, but more so like a protective belief. For instance, back in caveman times, when we were all cavemen, our mind would see fears like a saber-toothed tiger or a woolly mammoth. And those fears are real because you would get killed by those things. But now our minds are seeking out fears that might try to protect us, and it might be public speaking. It might be reaching out to that person that you are interested in, but you're too afraid to. And a lot of times I feel like our mind will see the unknown as a threat, even though there's no threat, it's just unknown. And that's where if you go even deeper into kind of the past of people, you'll notice that if there was a situation in your life that may have been traumatic or left you feeling frustrated or hurt, whether it's mentally or physically, if a similar trigger happens in your current life, you'll retreat or you'll respond in a way of fear instead of in a way of faith or in a way of moving forward. And it's funny because you asked that, and I feel like the best way to share that would be to show it. So I think that we could do an example, and I have my notes here, so I'm not texting for those watching. I'm just pulling up my notes so I don't mess this up. Where did this go? Love that. I love that I put my notes together and think I haywire. Do you edit any of your podcasts, or you just
No,
look straight through them?
it's okay.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
If you need editing, I'm here to help. Tangent. All right, this is great. So this is the analogy that I wanted to use. I want you to imagine, and you listening at home can imagine too. Imagine that I handed you like a backpack right now. But before I gave it to you, I filled it with bricks, literal bricks. And not just any bricks, but each brick would represent those false beliefs that you have about yourself. Now, one might say that I have to prove my worth. Another might say I can't afford to fail. Another might say that I have to be strong all times. One might say I'm not good enough. Now, I want you to imagine wearing that backpack every single day, like when you're going to sleep, when you wake up, when you go work out, you're wearing literally extra weight, extra baggage on yourself. Now, could you imagine, try running a business, try running your life or pursuing a family or calling, carrying that weight? Like, how would that feel?
Terrible.
It would be awful. Exactly. And the funny thing is, the crazy part is most men, most leaders, most people in general don't even realize they're carrying that.
Mm-hmm.
And they've had this weight for so long that they think it's normal. It's funny when you look at it, and a little tangent of this is I remember one time I had realized that there was a span of time that I had asthma that was triggered by allergies. And it got to a point where I literally couldn't breathe for a couple of days. And I went and got an inhaler, like an emergency inhaler, to make it stop. And of course, I went to the doctor and we got figured out after the fact. But up until then, that moment with that inhaler, it was like breathing for the first time. That's what I mentioned earlier, like seeing for the first time. And a lot of times we see what normal is for us is not really normal at all. And it's so interesting to think of that way. Now I want to ask you this though. If I told you that you had permission to take off that backpack, would you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
totally. You totally would. Exactly. And that's the exact question I feel like every man, every leader, every person that has to face that. Like you have to face that idea of, then why do I do what I do? And it's that self-reflection, which again goes into another modality of thinking and emotional intelligence that I feel isn't carried a lot, and especially in circles of men. I don't know about you, but I know growing up, emotions weren't really something that you talked about. You just shoveled down. And it's funny because they've even shown studies that when we suppress our emotions, they will literally have a impact on our nervous system. So at a nervous system, at a neurological level, it will affect us and essentially make our body sick. So it's like that idea of, oh, feelings don't matter, just bottle them all up until they just go away. They won't go away if you don't address them. And the more that you push them down, the deeper that they root inside of you and then show up as physical ailments. And I feel like it's really interesting if we don't cover those things. But yeah, a lot of the work that I do now is similar to that example, is that idea of if we don't first recognize our blind spots, our limitations, our shortcomings, then we won't be able to overcome them. And I think the first step is really recognition. And then after that recognition, the next step would be reorganizing our thoughts and seeing if the thoughts that we have right now are serving us or they're serving our fears and our doubts, and just stepping into, man, my leg went to sleep. Don't need to stand up. Just seeing if what we're doing is really serving us in a way that's going to get us to our full potential. Yeah, I could dive into more, but
And that's what you do, right?
yeah, this is what I do. Yes.
So
One of the
you're
things that I do. Yes.
the link that you sent me had the refresh my memory. What was the name of it? It was
The
about
red print.
yes. So that's what you do to basically lead other men into their
Better stuff.
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better stuff. Yeah. And their purpose and calling. Yeah.
So you like to spread that. How do you work with somebody? Do you work at a one-on-one or do you work like in a group or what do
Definitely.
you do?
I've done both. So it's funny. I always like to joke and say the way to work with me is there's a few ways. There's for free or a decent price because I like to really focus in and tailor made the framework to the person I'm working with. And that's hard to do if there was like 50 people in the room right now. It's hard to give your full attention there. But yeah, and it's, and there's that, the way to, I work, sorry, my leg fell asleep and it totally took me off track. I'm like, man, I moved it and I couldn't feel it. And I was like, oh, squirrel, I'm sorry. But yeah, so essentially the first way is I know that not everyone can afford a high ticket program to get to the next level. So that's why I create content. A lot of the content, whether it's interviews I have with people to share their story on my podcast, or I do a lot of solo content, which is a lot of what I've been talking about in a deeper way that's able to reach more. Because if I create a video and put it out there, I can reach thousands, opposed to if it's just me and you talking and there wasn't a camera there, then I could help you and impact you, but essentially the impact is only in a small sphere. So
Right.
there's the way that I like to work on the one-on-one. I enjoy having those coaching conversations. And I've also done groups before. I lead a group in my church. This is more so just because I care about it and I'm passionate about it. It's not necessarily like a portion of the business side of things. And I lead a group of men of about 12 to 15 when everyone's there. And it's very similar. I feel like it's important to, when it comes to coaching around it, there's a lot of ideas. Like you can just hear a ton of advice until you're blue in the face. Like I could sit here and tell you, these are the steps that you need to take. You can do this and that. But I feel like more long lasting change happens when you create a safe environment for someone to process the moment for themselves. So a lot of what I do is I say that I don't tell people what to think. I show them how to think. And a lot of what I do is more questions. It's great that you're asking questions and I think that's huge. And I feel like a lot of times we're searching for answers, but more than searching for answers, what's the question that you could ask that could open your mind to a new perspective that you haven't thought of before?
So what would it be something
For
that
sure.
you would ask?
For sure. And there's a ton of questions. Like going back to that first one is, who are you really? Not who are you for everyone else, but down to your core. If you had to sit down with a piece of paper, even that's an easy practical way that someone could do watching, listening at home, is pause and say, write it a piece of paper, even notes in your phone, and say, who am I really? And sit with it and see what comes up. And don't accept the first answer. So it's so easy to accept the first answer because the first answer would be like, I'm a self.
Superficial.
Yeah, I am a self. It's very much the doing, but what's behind the doing? Like I mentioned in my years of rapping and performing, I had to strip all that away to see who's behind that. Because the thing is, having a gift and a skill can get you into a room, but it's the character and integrity you have that'll keep you in that room. And it's that idea of, yeah, you can be really great at sales and you can get a lot of money and get to a level of success, but who are you as a person? Where is your integrity? What is your purpose beyond that other than just to get to the next sale for yourself? Because what is wealth if it's
Empty.
not shared? If it's not, yeah, if there's not something, because you could, and I'm not dogging on you, I'm just using an example.
Mm.
Like you could reach the pillar of success and wealth and money, and maybe you had acquired a wife and kids on the way, but what did that sacrifice cost you? So another great question would be is like, what's the cost? What's the cost of my current action? But what also on the flip side, what's the cost of the inaction? Because with a lot of people that aren't wealthy yet, aren't successful yet, aren't achieving what they thought that they could achieve, what's the cost of that inaction? Because a lot of times when fear was to get us trapped in this state of procrastination, there's I feel like we've all been uniquely giving an opportunity to encourage and impact people at whatever level that is. I feel like you do the same thing. Like you as a salesman, you get to interact with people all day. You get to have conversations like this all day. And you had the unique opportunity to bring your perspective, your story, what you've experienced, and at some way provide value. Because I feel like we can all learn from each other.
Mhm.
And again, that goes back to that idea of if you don't have an open mind to things, then of course you're not going to be able to mm, learn from others. But I say all that to say is, yeah, I think that there's this, the more that we can sit and think, who am I really? And why am I here? Because I don't believe that we were put on this earth by accident. I don't believe that it's just a common occurrence, oh, some atoms smashed together, poof, here you are. Here's Lewis, and here's Red. I believe that God is put us on earth with a purpose, and I feel like that's the two. I love that quote. The two most important days of your life is the day you're born and the day you discover why. And I
Mm.
feel like if you know why, you know the who and the why you're here, who you are, then regardless of what the career, regardless of the vehicle, like, oh, great example, I was talking to a client of mine. He's this younger guy, and he's actually from Egypt, and he was saying, oh, hopefully I didn't he mashed the mic there, and he was saying, 'cause he wants to be a copywriter, so he's really in the online space and wanting to make money and help write emails and stuff, and he's so much more than that, and he was trapped in this thought of, "I'm not seeing this take off how it should. What am I doing wrong?" And I encouraged him to look at it like, that's a vehicle. That's not you. If you were looking at different vehicles have different purposes. Like you look at, to use higher end examples, you look at a Lambo and you look at a G-Wagon. So the Lambo is going to get you somewhere fast. It's wild and crazy, like it's a race car. In the G-Wagons, you fit more people, you got more space to haul stuff, to carry stuff. Maybe you put a family in it. Now, if you wanted to take your family on out to dinner, they're not going to fit in a Lamborghini. But if all we see is we're tied to that as the identity, then we're not able to use our full potential, and vice versa. You wouldn't go try to race in a G-Wagon. You probably would do better than other vehicles. But for the sake of the analogy, it's that idea of, I feel like a lot of times we're in that space of, oh, again, it goes back to we become what we do. And I feel like my biggest mission is to challenge that thinking and be like, are we what we do, or are we something deeper than that?
So what will be something deeper than that? Do you have an example on top of your head, maybe from somebody else that you work with that they figured they went deeper?
Yeah. Yeah, I could think of one of my first clients. His, we'll leave names out for confidentiality. But one of my first clients, he came into me, and at the time, he actually was in a group of mine learning how to package your knowledge into educational courses or whatever it may be. And he practiced law. I think he was an attorney. So he had committed all of his life to being an attorney. And he was at a place where, okay, let me go teach people how to pass their bar exam or whatever it is. That was like his service that he was thinking through. And I had a conversation with him, and I got into, are you happy? Do you feel fulfilled with what you're doing? He was like, no, I feel miserable. This doesn't feel like what I'm supposed to be doing. And come to find out, his hobby was country music. Like he enjoyed writing songs, performing at various gigs, and he was in talks to getting signed on an independent record label in, I think, Tennessee, Nashville area probably. And I was like, "So what's stopping you from that?" And he was like, "That's not a real job. I can't. can't live that out. What do you mean? I can't go do that. I'm supposed to be an attorney. And we dug deeper and come to find out some point of his story in life, meaning people, usually those that love us and want the best for us, can unintentionally cap our full potential of what we are capable of doing. And somewhere along the lines, someone in his family was like, you won't ever make it as a musician because it's not possible. And early on planted that seed where most of his life he lived with that thought. It's like, oh, that's a cool hobby. But now he's performing multiple nights a week. He's fully stepped into that. And it's just that idea of it really amazing. I'll use another analogy. I love this analogy. You might have seen it in some of my other content, which, sorry if you've seen it, but it's a great one. Michelangelo, right?
Right.
So Michelangelo, one of the best sculptors, painters of our time. So Michelangelo, when he created the sculpture of David, the biblical figure David, it's immaculate. It's amazing. Like the details, like how can someone take a huge piece of rock and create that masterpiece? And that's literally what someone asked him back in that time. Here's this big piece of rock. You got it here. How do you see David and make that? And he said, it's simple. I just chiseled away the parts that weren't David. And I feel like that's a lot of the work that I'm called to do. And the coaching and the content is so much of our lives, we're fed, whether we know it or not, in identity. We're fed a false narrative even. And we begin to wear that. Or we begin, it literally looks like, it's almost, I'm not fat shaming, but it's almost like wearing a fat suit, essentially. And it's, yes, the person may be overweight to the point of not being healthy, but underneath that, there's so much more than that. They're called to be healthy. They're called to make a difference. And I skewed the two metaphors together. But essentially, it's that idea of, I feel like a lot of what is powerful and necessary that most people don't realize is the need to take a step back and get an outside perspective of who they are and how they're showing up in the world. And I feel like a lot of what I do is that. Hopefully that answered your
Yeah. So it's like you're people's potential,
yeah,
and that's how you feel. That's what you were called to do,
definitely.
to see people's potential and help them reach that.
Yeah.
And the way that people that you help people reach their potential, it's by asking questions and see where's that block, that 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 belief that blocks their potential.
Yep.
Because it's not that they can't reach that potential, but they don't believe that they can reach that potential. So you help them to work through that so they can get to that potential.
Yes. And to tie back into the psychology and the modern science. Now, again, I don't have a master in therapy, and I will say if you ever need deeper therapy, I'm always here to say that's work for those professionals in those areas. But I will say that what's fascinating about our minds is for the longest time we thought once we had an idea about something that was set. And there's this thing in our mind called neuroplasticity. Have you heard of that?
Mhm.
So it's essentially the idea that our mind will make new neural pathways, meaning new connections to certain things. Now, if you grew up, again, going back to any of those examples, if you had a traumatic event where you were walking down the street and got attacked by a dog, so you say that, or maybe you were in a car accident and it was traumatic to you, when potentially, if we live in a space of fear out of our brain wanting to protect us, it might keep us off of that path in order to protect us. But the beautiful thing, and it's not just asking questions. I know I've really simplified it. It's much more than just asking questions. There's various worksheets and journaling and visualizations, and all of those are backed by science and more than just theory. Because I feel like a lot of times you hear all this and it's hard to wrap your mind around. But there truly is something that happens when we allow ourselves to look at our situation from different points of view and see, what if there's more? And what if there's a different way?
It's hard. The older I get,
Mm-hmm.
personally, I notice, like when I was a kid, I used to, because I grew up Catholic, so I used to always wonder if God was real, right? So that's kind of like the
For sure.
questions I would have. And then the older I get, the less doubt that I have,
Yeah.
because I see a lot of things, or I hear other people miracles that
Yeah.
happen in their
For
lives,
sure.
right? Hey, this happened to me,
Definitely.
and then things happen on your own lives,
Mhm.
and it's hard not to
Mhm.
believe.
For sure.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Definitely.
So it's, yeah, I get what you're saying.
For sure.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
That's so good. And that's great. And I appreciate you sharing that. And I think another important piece too is with this, I feel like vulnerability is an important piece and an openness and a willingness to have those people in your life. Again, I'm not saying go to your stranger on the street and pour out your soul and pour out what you're going through, because that probably won't end well unless they happen to be trained, but also in a, so I don't recommend that. But I say that to say is I think that's why community is so valuable. And I feel like God has created us to not just get into isolation. Because another thing that I've noticed is in the work that I do and just in life in general is, I'll preface this with, I believe that there is good and bad forces around us. And I believe that the bad forces around us will, when we can be isolated from anyone, we begin to start thinking, I'm alone and I'm the only one that experiences whatever this is. And if there's something beautiful that I've seen in the groups that I've helped facilitate and the men that I've talked to, is I love to use this question. Again, once you've established a connection with someone, then you can ask a question like, what do you want me to not know about you? Because that's a challenging question. A lot of people, they're holding close something in their life that they don't want to share with others. And it's really interesting when you ask that question to a room of people that have granted a level of trust where it's a safe place to share that, and see how when one person shares that, someone else in the room has experienced that to some degree. And that's like a light bulb moment in itself, because then that person's, what do you mean? I'm not alone? You mean that, oh, wow, this isn't my little problem that I thought I've had? You mean
It
that?
makes them feel better.
Yeah. It's a sense of not only just feeling better, but then you find a sense of hope. And I feel like that's what, at our core, not just as humans, but I feel like we're not just flesh and blood, but there's also a spirit soul aspect to us. And I feel like we long for that hope. We long for that connection. We long for that hope. And I feel like when we don't have that, or we misplace that in other places, because you can go find pseudo hope in gaining more stuff and getting more things. And yes, those are great, and I'm all for it. And one day I will have the Lambo and this and that. And but they won't have me. And I think that's the kicker. Is a lot of times when we go try to put all of our lives into certain things, then all of a sudden it's not that I have those things, but those things have us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I think personally, I think I've been, it's funny that you mentioned this because I've been struggling with that. Not in the same way. I'm not big on things or
Yeah,
having
for sure.
things or anything like that. It's more of, and this is just something that I realized, it's that, like, another thing other than having things,
Hmm.
and I think it might be tied to that, because people want to have things because they want to know, because they want to have a status. They want people to
That's
think,
exactly.
having people think a certain way about them.
Hmm.
So with me was like my work ethic,
Hmm. Yeah,
or
love
working
that.
out, or
Hmm.
being on time. And I will always stress that about that,
Hmm.
that I
That's
always
good.
have to be this person that has to
Hmm.
be on time, has to work hard. And if I'm like laying down or just being lazy
Yeah.
or just
No, I get that
enjoying an hour of just watching TV or whatever, then I'm not
for
good
sure.
enough,
Yeah.
right? Like I always have to be working.
Hmm.
And recently I've been thinking, like, why can't I just take a break and don't feel guilty for taking a break.
That's good.
You know what I
That's
mean?
so good.
So it's like what you're talking about, but
Yeah.
in a different way. So there's different ways that you feel guilty doing things that everybody needs a break. So everybody needs a dream. Maybe your dream is having a Lamborghini, right?
Yeah.
So
Not necessarily. That it
so
was back in the day.
yeah, everybody needs a dream. Everybody needs a break, and it just I feel like feeling feeling guilty of having those dreams or those
For sure.
feelings makes you.
Mhm.
That's what's vulnerable about you, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't wanna show weakness per se, and you just keep going
Yeah.
and just and what you're saying, it makes a lot of sense because you stop and think of why you're doing the things that you're doing.
Yeah.
Wait a
Literally.
minute, this is not what I want to
Literally.
do. This is not who I want to be.
Mhm.
This is yeah, this is my goal,
Uh-huh.
but I'm not willing to sacrifice my family or all my time at work to achieve this goal because then after I get this goal, this
Yeah.
is not as important as sacrificing my family or time with my family.
That's so good. We should explore that. I'm down for it if you are.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So as you mentioned, that's something that, because again, that first step is awareness, and I'm curious, where do you think that belief came from for you? For instance, the belief for you is that if I rest, then I'm weak, or if I'm late, then, or if I don't work out, or what do you
So
think that?
when I grew up, I basically, me and my brother,
Mhm.
we grew up by ourselves. Nobody took care of us. There was adults in the house, but they weren't
Mhm.
raising us.
Yeah,
So we were like,
it's such a challenge.
so we had to watch out for ourselves,
Yeah.
feed ourselves. And then I was born in Mexico.
Wow.
And then I came here when I was about 12 and I came with my mom because my parents are divorced.
Mhm.
So when I came here, my mom worked 2 jobs, so I would hardly see her. So I had to take care
Yeah.
of myself. It was since a really young age, I had to be in survival mode.
Yeah, literally.
And then, like you said, it's just like those things that keep you alive, that keeps you safe. Those beliefs are later on are beliefs that you don't no longer need because that's
Mhm.
not the case
Yeah.
anymore. Like you're not surviving
Yeah.
anymore. It's
Right.
okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
But
You can breathe.
yeah, but some people
Mhm.
don't realize that's what's hurting them. They don't let go of the old beliefs that don't serve them anymore.
Yeah, that's good. What would it look like for you to, or maybe you already have, what would it look like to let go of those beliefs?
Yeah, so I'm working on that.
Yeah,
I've been going to therapy for 3 years
awesome.
now.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things. That's why that's one of the things that catch my attention that you were saying, like the um where was that again? Psychology,
Modern applied.
the modern psychology. It was like, oh, okay, I like that because I go to church every Sunday and I don't think it makes me any better than anybody else.
For
It's
sure.
actually the opposite. You go there because you need to go.
Yeah, definitely.
There's something that,
Yeah, it's a,
you
it's a
know,
hospital.
yeah, it
Yeah.
helps you. And when I, like you were saying that when you read the Bible, sometimes
Mhm.
it reads you, like
Yeah.
it tells you what you need to do. And this is exactly what I was going through. You have the gospel in church
Mhm.
on Sundays and they'll read certain thing and it's like God is talking to you and it matches to whatever you were working on therapy, for example.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
there, and I like the Bible because it has a lot of principles that the modern psychology talks about.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and that's, I feel like I've been given the unique gift of, and I've asked for this from God. And definitely it's not all me, but I'm like, God, help me see the commonalities and let me see the differences and see where both can, they can merge together to not only just change the physical life, but change the spiritual life as well. And I think that's so huge. And I love that you're going to therapy. I think that's wonderful. Do you find, and this is something interesting that I found with some people, do you find that going to therapy has moved you forward towards becoming better, or finding purpose or finding meaning? Or do you necessarily sometimes might feel like it's, how do I word this? Where you're bringing up old wounds, if you feel like addressing that is getting you to go forward, or is it getting you to see it from a different light?
So I think it depends on personality.
For sure.
My personality is if it's hard, I want to do it.
Yeah, that's good.
I gravitate towards that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why,
Yes. That's and some of
but
them.
it's yeah, and this is another. This is a belief that I have that if you're not growing, you're dying.
Facts.
So
Have you been watching my podcast? I play what I play all the time.
really,
Yeah.
it's based on science too. Like I like all the facts,
Mhm.
and I also like to listen to the Bible and things
Yeah.
like that because a lot of things match on what we're saying, like this, like the scientific facts, and the Bible. They have a lot of things in common that people don't realize. It's just word different.
Yeah.
And so, like for example, that after you turn 30, your muscle mass starts deteriorating and you start losing muscle. So it's important that you work out and you do weights after 30. You should do it before.
Yeah. But even more so
after 30 because you start losing muscle mass and you need to work out harder.
Yeah.
Not less. So I think that that principle applies to spiritually.
Yeah.
Like you need to do more, not less. And that applies on everything else. Like the clock is ticking. You run out of time. You need to do as much as you can. So when you're in your deathbed, you don't have any regrets.
Yeah. I would challenge that. I would challenge that with the thought of we hold tension because when we want to do more, if we're not careful, more isn't always better. It's just more.
Right.
And a big thing that I feel like is this thought process of how can I become more by doing less. Now that's not laziness as some people were. Again, I talk to a lot of high achievers, overachievers, and a lot of times we think that busy is productive, but it's not.
Right.
Busy is broke. If we get real honest.
Yeah.
And I think that what's great with having these kinds of conversations and even just carving out space for one rest, because obviously we're not resting 7 days a week. Some people might, and you might want to listen to the opposite. You need to lean into the hard, accept the hard thing. But what I say that is how can we be most focused on what we're called to do and what we're created to do? Because again, if we're not careful, we'll dip into that idea of we're chasing everything as entrepreneurs, as business owners, the shiny object syndrome we hear about. And I've been really, really challenged by making the most of the time that I have. And especially more, I have 2 kids, they're 4 and 2. So it's special times for me. They're younger. And I'm challenged in the tension of, I know I need to build great things, not only because I'm called to it, and I know that I want to impact lives. And at the same time, there's 2 little lives right here that are, if not equally as important, maybe slightly more important, and especially in this season. And yeah, I think that's a challenge and something to ponder is it's not necessarily doing the more, but it's doing the most effective.
The most effective. Yeah. And there's a saying, I don't know if it's if it's used in the United States, but in Mexico they say that the lazy people work twice.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of
I
that?
haven't heard that.
So basically what they're saying is like if you're lazy, you're gonna work twice. Why? Because you do the thing that you feel lazy about doing and you're gonna do it in a lazy way. So trying to do it quick.
Yep.
And then your mom, let's say that your mom tells you to sweep the room.
Yeah.
And then you do it in a lazy way. You do it, but not really. And then you half-ass do it basically,
Yeah.
and then your mom comes and she's it's not done right. So you're gonna have to
Yeah. Gotta do it
redo it
twice.
again
Yeah.
until it gets done. So you have to do it twice. So that's
So good.
the I think that's one that kind of goes with what
Oh
you're
yeah, for
saying.
sure.
It's if you're gonna do something, do it right. So you don't have
That's
to
so
do it
good. That's
twice.
so good. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's real. And also, it takes a bit of discernment and awareness too, because if we're not careful, especially if we have a heart to help and serve people, because sometimes the dark side of that is in you're overextending yourself for someone that may actually be taking you off track and distracting you from what you're really supposed to do. And it's finding that balance there as well as it's interesting. And it's also funny, even as you say do it right, it makes me think of the preparation is a big thing.
Yep.
And that idea of a lot of times it's the Abe Lincoln quote. I think it was Abe Lincoln. You know how it gets when it's older down the line and they try to quote someone, but it's that idea of if you had 8 hours to chop down a tree, you
Right.
spend like, what was it, 7 hours sharpening your axe?
Right.
And I'm like, man, that's so good.
It is.
Because so much of our lives, if we just, but then the flip side of that is then you can get stuck in the preparation and not taking the action.
Yep.
So then you, again, it's finding the, and it's not necessarily a balance, more so like a tension of the two.
I think that's why it's important to have people like you guiding other people.
Definitely,
You know what I mean? It's not like the same thing that I do with my customers.
for sure.
It's I guide them through the buying process.
Yeah,
Because I do this all day, every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
They don't know what to look for. They have a lot of questions, and I
Yep.
can answer them because I've been through it before.
Yep.
So it's like you already been through the process of finding out the false beliefs and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So you can
Yeah.
guide people through the same process.
Yeah.
So that's what's important to, and we come back to the same thing that you were talking about. God has made you for a purpose.
Yeah.
So you have a purpose, and that might be your purpose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah. And even recently, there's the idea of people, sometimes we need to be challenged. And I think that's something that I've found even recently. Because again, as far as the way I even approach how I coach and help people, help clients, is I myself am still a learner. Like you said, if we're not growing, we're dying. And that's how I feel. So I'm always feeding myself with new resources, or like I recently just finished another course on cognitive behavioral therapy. And I think that it's important to surround yourself, like you said, with people that are, even if it's a couple steps ahead and even further, because they're going to see things and they're going to prevent pitfalls and shortcomings and drastically cut the time of what could have happened. Because I think of some of the people that they may spend their years trying to figure out what's going on. And it's funny, I even look at it like this is, I can't remember who said it exactly, but there's 3 S's that we can apply to our lives, and it's state, story, and strategy. I don't know if you're familiar with this.
No.
State, story, strategy. A lot of times with these 3 S's, people jump straight to a strategy. And yes, practicality and taking action is very important, because if you never take action, nothing's ever gonna move forward.
Yeah.
But when we jump to strategy first, we skip the story. And the story is who we believe we are and what we believe about ourselves. And then if you don't have the right story about yourself, then it doesn't matter how many quick tips or thousands of life hacks that you hear. There's always going to be a cognitive distortion, because the actions we're taking and the who we think we aren't in alignment. And when that's not in alignment, then we're never going, there's always going to be like, it's like the opposite ends of a magnet. There's always going to be this tension. But when we are in alignment, and our alignment is with the strategy, then we can X or 100X our progress and our growth in our time frame. But more so than before, the strategy is the state. And it goes back to that idea of emotions. Now, obviously, some might think that's a little bit woo-woo about like acting yourself up, but there's science that backs it, that if you are slumped over and you tell yourself, I'm tired, and that gets into how much our words matter, but that's a whole nother thing. So I'll ponder that for a moment. But essentially, if you say that you're tired and you believe you're tired, then that's going to put you in a state of being tired. Now, the opposite, if you choose to get yourself going, that's why with working out, once you get past the need for the motivation and you're able to dip into the discipline, then you're able to do it. But even then, there's still some days you wake up, I know you feel it,
And you don't like,
and you don't feel like working out.
yeah,
And it takes maybe a little bit more energy drink, pre-workout. I'm not condoning that, but also I get it. I love some pre-workout. And it might take that playlist or that thing that you've tied to get you into that moment. They've done studies and they call it like the Superman pose, but when you stand and you do this,
yeah,
or if you do this, when you change your physiology, it changes your psychology. And sometimes we have to change our physical state for the spiritual and the mental to catch up. So I say all that to say is if you just start with strategy and you slump over and you haven't changed the story and you haven't changed the state, it matters and the order matters. And I feel like a lot of times we get that backwards. But again, that's where there's people like me that, again, I'm no special person, but I'm just committed to doing the work and coming in with a servant heart to want to help others see the same thing.
I think the purpose is important because you didn't make the sweater that you're wearing today.
Yeah.
Or the hat or
Yeah,
the
for sure.
shirt or the car that you're driving.
Yeah.
Like you didn't make that. So
Yeah.
we need people with a purpose of doing other things. Like whenever most likely if a pipe breaks in your house or
Yes.
the electricity goes out, you're gonna call an electrician, plumber, and that's what they're called out to do. So
Yeah.
I think that everybody has their purpose, and it's very important that everybody specialize in something.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's okay to know a little bit of everything and understand some
Yeah.
things. You need to be or have a purpose. It's good for everybody. You help other people
Yep.
and it's good for you.
Yeah, that's so good. And I love that you touched on that because it's that idea of, and a lot of times, some people will be in the current place that they're at, whether it's in looking at career as an option. So say that someone is a plumber and they've got this idea of they're miserable. And I would challenge that with just because this might be your skill set and this might be the career path you're on, you can still bring the who and the calling and the purpose that you are to that. There was a guy I interviewed for my podcast. Shout out to Jason Heads Up Landscaping. Great guy. Amazing story. But he's a landscaper. But deeper than just doing landscape, what's bringing him fulfillment is he knows that he's creating works of art that are bringing people to see that I don't just have a house, I have a home. Like they're something to be proud of, essentially. And he's tied that purpose to what he does. So that's what makes him stand out. And that's what makes his work matter. So I encourage those people that are in those places of maybe that's just a season too. Like for instance, I sold cars for a while earlier on in the state, and it was great. It was a great understanding because it's something I apply now. Or I was a busboy cook at a Tex-Mex restaurant. And it's funny because I feel like every season we're in, we can either choose to hate it. And a lot of times when we choose to hate the season we're in or the occupation we're in, for some reason we end up being in it longer than we probably should.
Right.
And it's amazing how if you're just faithful and obedient to take what's in your hands and do what you can with what you have, God's going to bless that. And when that's where we're at, and we come with a heart of not just selfishness or like, what can I gain or what can I take? And we come with a heart that truly is to help others, serve others, be generous. It's amazing how when we're in that space, how we find a new level of purpose and fulfillment in life.
Yeah. So, I mean, you don't have to love it, but you have to have your eyes open.
Yeah.
And it happens in God's time. So if if you're staying longer than you think that you should be on that
Yeah.
season, it's probably because you haven't learned what God's trying to teach
Literally, literally. Another quote that I love is, "If it's not working for you, it's working on you." That's so good.
you. That it's so
And that's
good.
so hard to live. Because when you're in it, it's
It
hard to do.
sucks.
When you're in it, we're like, all right, God, that negative bank account, got a plan? Because I'm hungry. My
Yeah.
family's hungry. And you see those moments where you're like, all right, what's going to happen? And then instead of looking, I think, again, that goes back to the mindset. That goes back to the modern applied psychology is what we think about, we bring about. And that goes back to scripture. As a man thinks, so is he. So if we can fix our thoughts to the things, Philippians 4:8 says, focus on what's excellent, noble, pure, worthy to be focused on. If we can keep our eyes on that prize and not look at our lack, that it'll be amazing what happens when we stop complaining and we start being grateful. Because gratitude is literally a magnet for miracles. And yeah, so good.
And it's like a domino effect. It just
Oh yeah, exactly.
keeps going and going. And it's the opposite if you're feeling the other way.
Yeah.
If you just, you know, not thankful for anything and you just cursing everything and you just like, oh, the hell with this. And then it's just gonna keep going the opposite direction. Yeah, sometimes you're in that space where things seem not to be working out. But and that's what I'm saying, that the older you get,
Oh yeah.
the more I believe, the less doubt that I have.
Yep.
It's because I lived it so many times where I thought that this is supposed to be working this way. And then I look back and it's, oh, that's funny how that worked out.
Yeah.
Like I was all worried about it. I was worked up. I had anxiety and it wasn't even having anxiety. That's why
Yep.
when bad things happen now, it's if you're thankful for the things that you do have,
So
everything else is gonna work itself out.
Yep.
And doesn't matter how worried you get, how much anxiety you get, the problem is not gonna get fixed.
Yeah.
So so it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
And then
literally.
the only thing you end up being is just being an asshole to everybody else.
Literally.
Everybody around you, because you're stressed out, because you have anxiety, you're just a bad person to be around.
Literally.
You know what I
No,
mean?
that's so good. That's so good. And I think, again, thinking back to, yes, we're talking about that. I'm thinking of someone that may be watching this and they're like, okay, this is great and all, Lewis and Red. Here you're saying what you're saying about it, but I'm living that and nothing's changing. Well, what do you do? And I feel like that's where, again, it goes back to that community piece. And more so than the community pieces, you need those coaches and mentors, or if you don't have the funds for that, if that's not where you're at, you need to consume content like this. It's going to literally change and snap you out of that. Because again, when you're in it, oh, I love what my friend said earlier today. I was mentioning a situation of mine, and I was even just being fully transparent. I was spiraling a bit myself. And again, I have coaches, mentors in my life. And I was like, this is a situation I'm going through. Side note, sorry for bringing you into my drama. That's what I said in the moment. And he responded and he was like, it only feels like drama because you're in the middle of it. And I was like, if that ain't a word, bro, put that in a whole word. Because when you're literally in it, and going back to a practical sense of cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the things that I learned from it is perceptual positioning. It's a big fancy word I like to call the eagle eye perspective. Say you had a fight with your spouse. We'll use that as an example. So you have a fight with your spouse, and in that moment, you were just upset. Like you said, you're in the thick of nonsense, and you're in this heated argument with your wife. A good thing to do in that moment, it's hard. A good thing is to pause and think for that moment. There's three perspectives here. There's my perspective, my wife's perspective, and then a bird's eye outside perspective of what's going on. And if we can pause, step out of our perspective, and then next step into the other person on the other end, for this example, our spouse, and wonder maybe where is this coming from? What is it? Did they have a bad day? Did something not go right with work? And if we think of it that way, then what we're doing is we're disarming the tension of what's there. And sometimes, even taking it a step further, you take an outside perspective and you look at the two situations as a whole, and then the whole situation, and you're like, oh, that's probably why I feel this way. This is probably why she feels this way. And this is what's going on. But if we can pause and think, okay, that person's not the enemy here. And in this moment, we're both just reacting instead of responding. And I feel like that's another practical way to look at a situation.
I think that the problem with the example that you were given,
Mhm.
it's because we're so accustomed to social media. We're so
Literally.
accustomed to Amazon bringing things the
Mhm.
next day or
That
sometimes
part,
the
yeah.
same day. So you don't stop and think because you're
Exactly.
used to getting
That's so good.
everything right away,
Yep.
right now. Like we're
Yep.
living on the era of right now.
Mhm.
So you know, people don't know how to wait anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if they do wait, there's so much things that are catching your attention.
Yep.
So you don't wait at the doctor's office anymore. You get
No.
on your phone,
Yep. You're on your phone.
or you get in a car and you don't talk to that person anymore.
Mhm.
You get on your
Yep.
phone.
You're on your phone.
So it's so now when you get in an argument, you want to fix the argument or
Mhm.
you want to get to your point right away
Yep.
instead of, like you said, just waiting.
Yep.
I think that's the hardest part. And that's something that I struggle with.
Oh, yeah.
It's I want to figure it out right now
Yep.
instead of waiting and thinking. And because when you do wait, it's it doesn't fix itself, but it gives you, I guess it gives you time to think. Like you said, you just think in a
Mhm.
different perspective.
Yep.
And
That's so good.
maybe the issue that you had is not that big of a deal anymore.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
That's so good. And even as you speak that, again, I agree 1,000%. We're living in microwave generation
Hmm.
mentality. It's if we don't have it yesterday, we're already upset.
Right.
They're like, what do you mean? You ordered it today and you ordered it yesterday. Like, you got to get out of that. And one thing that I've thought of, and I've had a coach inspire me, is that thought of how can we slow down to speed up? And it sounds like paradox. But really, though, if we slow down, if you look at the time that we spent in the argument was time that we wasted. But if we slowed down and thought, okay, it's more than this, and in another practical ways, there's CBT, there's also NLP. And with NLP, there's this idea of what's called anchoring. So there's a physical anchor. So essentially it's a physical act. It's kind of, for instance, when you do this or you do that, but it's more so personal to you in a certain situation. It can be used on literally anything. But let's use it on the situation of heated argument with your spouse. And in the moment, you want to get your point across. You want to fix it. What if you begin, and again, begin, because it takes time to train your brain. The neural pathways have to be run through. It's like that idea of if you've seen a yard that has a dog, there's that pathway that's no grass is growing.
Right.
And that's because the dogs ran it for so long. And the same goes with our brain. In order to grow a new neural pathway, we've got to put the
Walking.
reps. So essentially, an argument, say you're in an argument with your spouse, and you come up with some kind of physical gesture. It doesn't have to be silly. It can be subtle. Like it could be maybe you grab your ear, or maybe you like put your hand on your heart. And not that's the first step. So the step would be doing a physical gesture, and we'll say hand on your heart. So me and you, you're husband and wife. We're having a heated argument. I want to get my point across. And then I remember, oh, there's a tool Red taught me. Let me put my hand on my heart. So you do that. You might do it subtly. And then once you do that, you want to tie that to the thought, my response is my responsibility. I don't need to fix this right now.
Mm.
The relationship is bigger than being right. Yeah, even if it was just my relationship is more important than being right. That could be the trigger for you. The thing you're saying to yourself. And over time, you're having an argument, you go, the relationship is bigger and more important than being right. You're going to be like, you know what? That's right. And over time, you're going to be like, okay, these arguments, which used to drag out, take more time when we're trying to get our point across,
Yeah.
then suddenly become here because at the end of the day, what we even were fighting about doesn't even matter in the grand scheme of things. we were just hangry, or we were just having a long day. And I feel like there's a lot of those simple tricks. Again, and that's a lot of the work I do, aside from just having conversations, is seeing those moments and being like, that's something you could apply. And that literally could be anyone watching, you yourself.
So it reminded me about something that a manager, when I used to sell cars too.
Yeah.
And when a manager something taught me that I used to until this day,
Mm-hmm.
slow down with the customer is going fast.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, if you're trying to go fast, you're going to slow down the process. I'm like, how is that? If you go fast, you're going to forget to ask for the ID, for the location. You're going to lose the keys. You're going to forget something.
Yep.
And when you thought that you were already over here on step 7, you're going to have
So
to
good.
call back and be like, oh, sorry, let me
Yeah.
make a copy of your driver license because I forgot
Yeah.
that step number 1.
That's fun. Yeah.
And if you slow down and make sure that you have every single step, it's going to go so much faster. So
Yeah.
it's like the
Yeah.
same principle.
Yeah. That's so good. Man. I even think of it to further that analogy is if our life is a house or a building, we very quickly want to build up to multiple stories, right? But if we do that, or like that instance with the car sales, if you're building too fast and these don't get the proper time to, whether it's the concrete to cook or whatever, by no means a general contractor. I have friends that do that, thankfully. But you get what I'm saying. If you skip steps, cut corners, when you're here and you build up to here, this will shatter and crumble.
Mhm.
But if you take the time necessary to get this foundation, to get the first floor where it needs to be, then as you build, this is going to last for your whole life and beyond.
Yeah.
But it won't if you do the opposite.
Correct.
So good.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so good.
Yep.
Come on, dude. This has been a great conversation.
It has. Thank you so much for the time.
Yes, definitely. I enjoyed how it was really organic. It wasn't, okay, this is our plan.
That's like why I did it, because I enjoy talking to people and I
For sure.
really don't have a reason.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you have a reason or other than just enjoying it, and
Yeah.
and that's the reason I did it, because what we were talking
Yeah.
about, like sometimes you just want to do things just because you enjoy them.
Yeah. That's so good.
I don't want to have a reason.
Yeah.
Like I have a reason to go to work because I need to make money. I
Right.
need to
Yeah.
support my family, that kind of thing, responsibilities. But what do I do that I like,
Yeah. That's
that
good.
I enjoy?
Yeah.
I talk to people.
Yeah.
And I
That's good.
always wanted to have a podcast just for the hell of it, just for fun.
That's cool.
And
Yeah.
I just,
Yeah.
and then I was thinking, I was like, what's holding me back? And it was
Wow.
like that, those thoughts that that we were talking about. Oh, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I don't know how to do it. I don't know how
Right.
to upload it. I don't know how to.
Yeah.
And then you take all those things away and you start thinking, can you record with your phone? Yep. Do you have microphones?
Yeah.
Yep. Do you have a computer? Yep.
There you go.
Can you look at YouTube video on how to upload videos or how to upload a podcast?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So what's really stopping? Is there really nothing stopping you? Just your thoughts making you think, oh, I'm not good enough, or I don't know how to do this,
Yeah.
or nobody's gonna watch it, or whatever the case is. You have all these negative thoughts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's getting started, I think, is such the biggest hurdle. It's the first step, and then it's the second step. It's just as hard. But the more steps you take, like for instance, I mentioned before we started, is my first podcast, I happened to have the equipment. I didn't video it. I probably could have. I didn't video it. I came from the rap background. So I was like, let me put a instrumental, maybe a beat. And sometimes it was almost spoken word just because the way I would script it all, because I just felt like that's how it came out. And I was like, I just got started. I just wanted to do something that was fun. And then, yeah, that that went for a while to the point when it wasn't fun anymore. And I took older episodes and still kept it going because I just felt like maybe I was still supposed to keep doing this. And a little dip there. But then I got connected and I was a guest on someone else's podcast. And they were like, why don't you do interviews? And literally that simple conversation sparked other conversations. And I've done conversations on my podcast for, it'll be three years now. And there's been sprints where I've batch recorded like 5 episodes in one day and then just released them once a
Really?
week. Yeah. Which again, that's a pro tip if you're able to do that. If you're trying to really, again, that's a whole nother, like we could go into a whole strategic meeting on that. But yeah, if you really want to make the most of the time there, is if you have multiple people that want to talk to you and you've got the time for it, just record it. And then you'll get to the space, which the wonderful space of delegating. And then you'll just get to hand it to someone to do all the extra part, unless you enjoy that. It's because I edited videos and did all that stuff for so long that I can do it proficiently. And if I want to turn it into something more and still be present for clients or still be present with my family, I'm going to have to figure out how to hand that off. And that's going to
Right.
be so beautiful because then I love it's that idea. When we say no to something, it gives someone else an opportunity to say yes. And then
Yes.
goes back to your purpose is their thought with purposes. There's someone out there that their purpose is to edit content and videos and put them on, and they like eat, sleep, and breathe thumbnails and titles. And I love that. And that's great. And I can lean into that sometimes, but being able to empower somebody to do that, it's going to be such a beautiful moment. And yeah, dude, that's so good.
So where can people find you?
Yeah. So you can find me at the Better Than Best Academy on YouTube, on Spotify, wherever you stream. So Red Wallace, Coach Red Wallace. If you Google search that, that's great. I have a website, but I'm working with a team to revamp that. So the website side of the thing, it's shelved for the moment. So if you want to reach out, Instagram, TikTok at coach.redwallace, you'll find me there. I'd be more than happy if you just shoot me a DM and be like, I saw you on Lewis Finds. Lewis found you and it brought me here. So something like that. And I'll be like, great, that lets me know where you came from. And yeah, I'm always open to connect with people. And if schedules align, I'm more than happy to have a conversation. I have a Zoom calendar that is out there on my socials. You'll find it. And if not, then I can direct message it to anyone that's wanting to connect. But I look forward to connecting.
Yeah, and if you text me whatever you want me to put
Yeah,
on the
definitely.
description of the video, I can put that on there, any
Perfect.
links or anything.
Perfect. I'm thinking, man, I want to see if I can help you. How about you send me this video?
Okay.
I'm not going to edit it. I'm just going to, because what are you using to, or are you not editing like at all? You're just,
Yeah, I'm not editing at all.
okay. Yeah. Let me see if I can help you because I have an idea. Because a few things that I've seen work for me seeing other podcasts is you being able to do the highlight reel. Essentially, there's like the highlights of what's going to be talked about.
I do have an app
Mhm.
that you put it on there and it makes shorts.
Yeah, it makes shorts.
Yeah.
So I use a software that has AI built in,
Mhm.
and it'll do a short, but it's full screen, and I'll throw music behind it, and it's what's at the beginning. And I can show you like some other examples, but that like really helps engagement of someone sticking around.
Yeah, like when I upload it on my YouTube
Mm-hmm.
and it at the end of, I don't know if it's at the end of the week or at the end of the month, my YouTube gives me a notification and says that this many people found your podcast because of shorts.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the
So
main reason
doing
that people
shorts,
find
and
us.
then not only just the shorts, but within the video itself, if it has like an intro that's literally just not like you saying welcome to the show, but just clips of the upcoming full that's pasted at the beginning, and it almost even almost leaving it as a cliffhanger. And I'll show you some examples, but that's a way to get people to continue to watch and be invested to want to watch because they're like, ooh, they talked about this. Because a lot of times with these longer episodes, you're like, we covered this, we covered that, we covered this. And not only just that, if you do go through a space of not having a lot of guests, or if you just get bored and you have the extra time, or you find someone that can help you with it, You can take the long form and be like, okay, so today we talked about maybe some of that identity, maybe some of that purpose. And then we talked about something not really related at all. You can chop all those up. You watch Joe Rogan, right?
Mhm.
You've probably seen Joe Rogan has separate clips that are, you can repurpose as shorts, but a little bit longer, say 5 to 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And you can upload those as separate videos. And then within the description, you can link, watch the full video. So then it gets people in this ecosystem of they're watching a lot of the content. So that's another way to also build. But again, I know that this is also a hobby. I don't want to try to turn it into a side hustle for you, but I would love to just help you with putting this episode together.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, if you just send over the video and I'll do as quick turnaround as I can. 'Cause got some time that I can allocate towards it. And it doesn't honestly take too long because I've got the system in place, because I've just learned over the years, like you can systematize how to get stuff done quickly. And AI is great because then you can leverage all that. But yeah, and I could even look into seeing what would be a great title for it, description, possibly a thumbnail if you're cool with that. And just make the packaging for it for you just to see how it does and if you enjoy it. If you don't, totally fine. I understand.
Sounds good. Yeah, I appreciate
Perfect.
that. Yeah,
Cool, yeah.
thank you. Because I do need help. It's like my channel, my videos are raw.
Yeah.
It's
I saw that when I saw some of it. I was like, oh, we're just jumping in.
yeah, basically.
Which is fine. I get it. It's cool. And it's like you said, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, it goes back to what we were saying. I feel like God connects people for reasons. And if anything, I can show you
A few tricks. Yeah.
tricks that'll help you get going. Because that's a whole nother thought in itself of another business idea, but also just helping people in those areas. And I shy away from it because I did it for so long, but I'm like, man, there's something there. There's a supply and demand for that. Whereas we had this whole conversation about identity and mindset, and that's very important. And explaining that to an average viewer or an average person on the world, it's not exactly the easiest, it's not easiestly marketable, opposed to a lot of people like yourself are in a space of, I've always wanted a podcast. I have no idea where to start. So maybe I'll watch some videos. But again, when you get into watching all the videos, you have all the different people and all the different places.
What you were talking about earlier was the 3S, right? Where you like get so much information
Yes.
that you don't actually do the thing.
Yes.
You just
You have
get
all the strategy.
yeah, you have all the strategy and you don't do any of it.
Yep.
You just
And
know.
yeah, sometimes you just need an outside perspective to be like, do this first. This is the plan. This is your vision for the podcast. Do that step.
Yep.
And then do this step, and then do this step. And yeah, over time you'll there's trial and error that which could take you years. Like for instance, a lot of what I did was trial and error. Thankfully, which the ministry I worked for, I did a lot of the YouTube was primarily what I worked on. And we took her channel from 55,000 subscribers to 175,000
Oh wow.
when I left, and now she's up to 300,000
Really?
subscribers. Huge. Yeah. Yeah, huge.
Wow.
And yeah, just being, because I remember we got our plaque when I was working those 4 years with her. The plaque that was like the 100K.
Yeah.
And I remember such the moment that was, because I was like, half of the videos, like multiple years, like 52 videos a year, literally, or videos I edited on that channel. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. And that's what kind of birthed the dream of my own, to start my own channel. I've seen it firsthand, the possibility. And yeah, it's just like you get a taste of that and you've been in that environment. It's so cool to see.
Yeah, I'm open. If you're willing to help me, I can take all the help that I can get.
Perfect. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to help. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what we can do. Because I'd like to see just doing some minor tweaks and just packaging. Because a big thing about YouTube is the packaging. Within the packaging, thumbnail, title, and description. That's the packaging. Because the content itself, as far as we're in a great space on YouTube where you've got people that literally just have a phone and they're talking to it. So as far as the days of overly produced, really polished, we're away from that. Those are great, but we're away from it. So like the level of the playing field as far as like that idea, because it's more acceptable. And I feel like TikTok was a lot to contribute to that, the positive of it, because TikTok was very much people would just run and gun, just share their wild crazy. And that's just trickled down the line to all the other platforms. And yeah, I feel this could almost be a part 2 at this point. Separate podcast what time is it? Okay, we've got some time being early. Oh, if you've got some time,
I'm good.
perfect. Yeah, just thinking of, we could do a whole strategy session of that. But I say all that to say is, it's like a sub passion of mine is creating content. Cause I've been doing it in some capacity for forever. Cause I can even think when I was rapping, I did a little vlog. They were so bad. 1, I couldn't speak on camera. 2, my camera was awful. My editing was awful. And I was just like, this was probably like 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. And I'm just like, hey guys, it's behind the mic. And I would talk about a song and then I'd have another clip of me rapping. It was so silly. But I say all that to say, I just document it. And I just did what I could with what I had. And I feel like there's such an encouragement there for those that may watch or listen to this, because people don't just consume podcasts that probably they do, but what's so much better than consuming is creating and contributing, because I feel like there's a whole nother level of what we've talked about. Because it's, we may have our occupation, but maybe we do have this passion to have conversations, or maybe you like to cook. You like to teach people to cook.
Yeah.
Like, or you like to work out, teach people to work out. Like it's really the possibilities are endless. And I think that a lot of people are just looking for permission to start. And it's almost like for you, it was almost like you had to give yourself permission to do that.
Right.
And it's funny because I feel like that's a lot of, and just to go down to a mindset coaching level, is helping people see that they have the permission to do what they want to do.
Yes.
Because so much in our mind, we're like, oh, I can't do it. Oh, Mr. Beast can go be a YouTuber. I can't do it. Who said you can't do that? Go do it.
Yeah.
And it's just encouraging and inspiring people to do it.
My logic was like, I thought about it for so long, and it was like, why would people want to come do my podcast? And I was like, okay, so I'm going to find people that want to do a podcast, because I don't know anybody around here, or at least anybody personally that has a podcast. So I'm going to be the one having the podcast, and I'm going to have friends and people that want to be on a podcast because they want to tell their story, or they have a business that they want to advertise. So I'll do that for free. And they come and talk to me, and that way it's a win. I'll do it because I like it, because it's fun, and they'll do it because they're advertising something. Or they just want to say they have something they want to say, or something they want to share.
People, what's the statistic that people love to hear themselves talk?
Or just some fun. I had friends here before. We just hanging out, talking,
chop it up,
reminding each other of things that we used to
reminiscing those
hanging out, and
that's cool.
That's
awesome. Man, dude, that's I feel like we could have more conversations in the future too.
I didn't realize you were so close.
Dude, I'm literally 15 minutes away. And I've been doing this for a minute.
So we should hang out more often too.
Definitely.
It was really nice to meet you.
Likewise. It's funny, I was like, for whatever reason, I'm glad the algorithm worked, because I'm like in those groups, because what you did was great. So that's a great example of outreach that reaches a broad audience when you don't know. If you can go the like cold DM route where you're DMing a bunch of...
I did that. And it worked, but not really.
It works.
Because they were like scheduling, and they're like canceling, and then like rescheduling, and I was like, man, they're really fake.
And then the in-person too. There's that barrier of trust as in sales. You understand. It's like some rando on the internet wants to meet is some random, but being in a business, I think, does help some of that trust factor. But again, everyone's always stranger danger. And it's like you're getting over that hump of stranger danger. And dude, most of my guest or virtual.
And I
99%.
thought about that
Yeah,
too, because it looks
99%.
easier to
It
do it,
some
because if you have the
it's so
camera,
much easier.
you have two shots, and on this one I only have one shot.
Mhm.
So I wanted to have two shots, but I
Yeah.
don't even know how to do
Right, yeah.
that.
That would be extra in post, like in post-production, like when you put it together, editing, if you had 2 shots. But even if you didn't think barrier of entry, like just getting started, every platform for video calls, you could do Zoom. I've done Zoom. I recently started doing Squadcast, and the main reason I do Squadcast is because I use an editing software called Descript, and they're linked. So it records it, and then I click those files and say edit in Descript, and it takes them to Descript. And then AI in Descript has a multi-camera select generate. So it automatically selects which
The
shot. So
shots.
you've got 2, you got both people, you've got 1, you've got 1. And there's other options, but that's just the one that I pick, and it's automatically selected it. Now, sometimes it's not 1000% accurate, but for the most part, it's great. There's that, yeah. And then it also has edit for clarity, or edit out any of the filler words, the ums, the likes. It'll edit, see those, scan this transcript, because it transcribes the whole video and sees all that in one button. There you go. Yeah. Edit for clarity, one button. And what's cool with the edit for clarity is, say that you wanted to condense it down and there was a lot of extra banter. You could say like how extreme you want to edit. A little bit, just take out some of the stuff, or medium or extreme, make it as condensed as possible. And it'll go and cut sections that are just filler and extra. Yeah, dude, there's a lot. There's a lot. And I say all that to say is most of that's AI and leveraging AI. When I was editing for the other channel, I was using Premiere Pro. I was digging deep into all the edits.
And I think that's what's having this the hardest part has been for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's finding apps and
Mm-hmm.
software
Yeah.
that works, because I've been trying different apps and different softwares, and it's
Yeah.
no, I'm not really feeling this one. So once you find one and you
Yeah.
get accustomed to working with that
Yeah.
specifically, the software with the AI or
Mhm.
whatever, it goes a lot easier.
Literally, yeah. And it's, yeah, proficient in what you use. And as far as recommendations for that, I would say pick what you can. It's like dieting. What diet works is the one you stick to. Working out, it's whichever one you have and stick to it. Because there's DaVinci, which is like a free, it's pretty full scale editing, and it's free software out there. You can download it to your computer. Or there's Descript, which is like online, that they have an app that's within your computer, but you could also do it online. And that one's a monthly subscription, and they have various tiers. Now, the more expensive tier is the one that's going to get all the extra AI. So it's just finding what budget and how much you want to really invest in it. And then, yeah, just sticking to one. Because, yeah, what I like about Descript is it does do the reels. Like, that's another option of AI. It's a whole section in itself. And you can say topics you want it to focus on, and you can say how many and for how long. So 60 seconds, 30 seconds, generate 5, and they're there. And then you can add captions that are added within
Yeah.
AI. So it's
Yeah.
very similar to, what are you using now?
I
Opus?
don't know that. Yes, that's
Okay.
that.
I assumed it was going to be Opus, or there's a few others out there, but Opus is the top. They were there first. But it's essentially like having Opus inside of your already edited video. So instead of exporting to another thing, it's a button inside there, and it brings up sub.
So it's one software that does
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah,
basically.
that's what I like about it.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, and there's various tiers. I think I'm paying $37 a month for this tier, because it's like a creator tier, because I don't have multiple people under me yet. So it's just me, so I don't have to have multiple accounts. But when you get bigger, like business tiers, you have multiple users within the system. But yeah, super all-encompassing. And I'll use ChatGPT for some of the packaging, like the title, thumbnail. I'll use that, but I use a combo. So Descript does the same thing. There's an option where it'll do a title, do a description. It'll give you different options, and I'll take those options to ChatGPT. And there's a ChatGPT like server that's specific towards YouTube SEO, which search engine optimization. So to make it better for YouTube. So yeah, there's so many layers. And I'm just giving free game here. This is like a master class. Like, why am I not Why am I not charging for this right now? That's the question.
Okay. Yeah.
Man,
Yeah. I
for
mean,
sure.
I take all the help I can get.
For
And
sure.
yeah, because my channel it's very raw. And that's okay. I want it to seem real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like not scripted.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going for.
Definitely.
And
And I think you can achieve that even as you progress.
mhm.
Like whether it's when you upgrade tech or whether you,
Yeah, I just want to keep the
yeah,
same kind of realness,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
I feel like you can still keep that. And that's important. It's the knowing your vision for it's huge. And like wanting that real relatable. Cause you look at like you mentioned Joe Rogan as like your inspiration. I think I saw you
Yeah.
say that. Is even Joe Rogan with a fully built out studio and all the extras, it's still real. It
Right.
still feels real.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have it nicely polished. They've got a team putting it together. But at the end of the day, it's still a conversation between two people. Technically three people, because there's like the extra cameraman that curates things.
But that's why I wanted to be in person because I feel like you don't have the same feel
That's fair.
when it's online.
Yeah.
I mean,
Definitely yeah, there's a barrier you have to break.
this is a different feel.
It is.
There's something missing there.
Yeah.
Because I had
No, that's real.
I do a lot of FaceTimes, Zoom meetings and that kind of thing. And it's just not the same.
Yeah.
I feel like you're not, even if I'm trying to be as present as possible, I am just not present 100%.
Yeah. And I think with that, it takes time. Cause yeah, no, I've felt that too. Cause I've done, like I said, 99% of my guests are not in person. There's another guy in Rockwall that does Tyler Gentles. Gentle. Yeah. Tyler Jackson Gentle. Anyways, he has a podcast, Kingdom Business Interviews. So he's also Christian faith based. He interviews entrepreneurs that are faith based. And that's his market, his niche.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I've helped him with a few videos and been a guest on his show. But again, it's yeah, as far as the circle of people that are podcasting in this area, there's not a ton.
And there's
Yeah.
another reason why I didn't want to, that's why I like Joe Rogan. It's because there's no niche.
Yeah.
And when I YouTube it or when I Google it, like how to start a podcast, it says that you need to have a niche. And I was like, I started it with
Yeah.
one. So I was doing manufacture homes and houses and that kind
Yeah.
of thing because I sell
real
manufacture homes
estate.
and real
Yeah.
estate and all that stuff. And I was interviewing my coworkers, but then it felt so limited.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't be here sitting with you right now
Right.
if I wasn't like
Literally.
opening my
Yeah. And that's so true. And that is the tension because I feel like from a marketing standpoint, niching down makes sense. And at the same time, it does limit you because a lot of my niche is limited, but also not. I guess that makes sense. Because it's like I usually talk to Christian men or leaders and hear their story. But I've had anyone from, there was a guy that he's a coach, a sales coach. And then I've had a guy that had a near-death experience recently. And then I had two pastors that are also barbecue guys on YouTube. One of
Oh,
them
that's
has,
cool.
yeah. So like it's pretty, and it's funny because it's like near-death experience, barbecue guy. This week's was he's a school teacher, entrepreneur, fitness coach. Yeah, it's all over the place. So there's a niche, but there's not. And I think the biggest aspect in that is I feel like the niche is you, if that makes sense. It's your your interest. For instance, my interest into modern applied psychology, my faith in Jesus is big. Leadership, personal growth. I play drums, former rapper. So there's a lot of elements. And the more that I've been online, the more I see, oh, I gravitate towards people because of those things. There's a huge mindset channel out there. And he also was a drummer in a band. And I'm like, that's cool because I like mindset and I like drums. So I
Yeah.
like gravitated towards that. Or there's other people for other reasons. But yeah, I think as far as niching, I think to the reason so many experts say niche down is because, again, it goes back to that like shiny object syndrome. And I feel like when we can narrow our focus, it helps us reach a certain space within the categories, the way it categorizes it. Because if you look at it from an algorithm standpoint, back when we had to do hashtags, hashtags are pretty much dead because our algorithm's so advanced. But even with its advancement, you could be like, okay, because looking at it from outside perspective, when I was looking at ears, I was like, is it about real estate? And I didn't ask you, I was just assuming so I was like, so if the audience is real estate agents, how can I best provide value to that audience? And that's where, if we're not careful, the brain goes there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that there's a way to niche down without niching down, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because like, it's like real talk. It's like honest conversations. Like saying that, keep a niche, but could reach anyone, if that makes sense. Because if you came in with a space of, we're not going to sugarcoat things, we're going to say honest things, we're going to share vulnerability, etc., that's going to leave out the superficial people or the people that are here for tips and tricks only. So like you're still finding an audience because when you try to be for everyone, you end up being for no one. Kind of like that's the thought. So there's both and to be there. But yeah, no, I think that's good. I think you're heading in the right direction.
Well, I think it's not gonna work out if I'm not myself.
That
Like
part.
people are
Literally that
going
part.
to, I've been doing sales since 2017, so for a long time.
You can literally talk about sales.
I could talk
You
about
know,
sales.
not saying
Yeah.
you to, but that's time in the game. Like that's skills built.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing that I notice is that if you're just trying to sell somebody just to make a commission, people can smell that.
Literally.
And if you're trying to help people accomplish their goal, trying to get a car, trying to get a house, trying to get a mobile home, whatever the case is, and if you generally care and you want to help them the best way possible and really care of their timeline, they're going to smell that and they're
Oh, yeah.
gonna be like, oh, this guy cares.
Yeah.
Like they see through the BS.
Yeah.
And they're gonna know that you're not
Yeah.
that you're
So,
BSing or not. So I feel it's the same way with podcasts.
Oh,
Like they're
1000%.
gonna, yeah, they're
and
gonna,
unfortunately, there's a whole space of podcasting. That's the goal, is to sell whatever they're selling. And they're getting people on the show to either, the guest is either selling what they're selling or the show is trying to sell the guest on whatever they're providing. And yeah, I feel like that's huge. The more that you can selling is serving. It's what's the quote I want to say? It's John Maxwell. He says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And
Yeah.
it's that idea of, and again, with the right person understanding that information, it's persuading someone to benefit both parties. If you're selling something where your intent is to help and serve somebody, then persuading them to that decision that they may not see is mutually beneficial because both win in that outcome. Opposed to if you're selling from a purely money-driven, money-hungry, selfish desire and you have that information, then you pour out this idea of, oh, I care, and you can still see it. It's still manipulation.
Yeah.
There's persuasion, there's manipulation, and it's finding that line of, at the end of the day, just be a daggum good human being. Is that hard?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it that hard? But it is, especially in the world we're in today, unfortunately. And then it's also hard because then you get into a space of wanting to have the benefit of the doubt for people, because you know that even though they may be making bad decisions and being hyper salesy and like hungry for the money, what's the deeper wound or situation they're dealing with that's put them in that space. And that's what's hard. You can do it again. It goes back to that whole idea of you have to focus on what's going to be the most effective and most impactful for my family and I and my purpose. And it's so easy to, yeah, oh, that's good.
That's why I like this. I like the idea of the podcast because I just never had any guidance when I was little.
Yeah, for sure.
And I had to kind of like figure things out. And so it is like a blessing in disguise because I never had a parent telling me, You have to grow up
Yeah,
to do this, or you got
for
to
sure.
grow up to do that, or you have
For
to go
sure.
to college, or you
Mhm.
have to be this, or you
That's
have to
good.
be that. So I never had that.
Mm.
So I always grew up thinking that I can just be whatever I want.
Yeah.
And every time I would look for a job or to do anything really,
Mm.
to find a wife, I just picked what I liked and I went with it. And I
That's awesome.
never had like second thoughts. I
Yeah.
never had this voice in my head like a mom or a dad saying, that's not good for you, or family doesn't do that, or
Mhm.
family are plumbers, or family is
Yeah.
electricians. Like I never had none of that.
Mhm.
So that was like a blessing in
For
disguise,
sure.
because sometimes you do want that voice
Yeah, you do want that with.
telling you or helping you or
Mhm.
guiding you.
Yeah.
And I never had it. So I have to figure it out on my
Mhm.
own. But I guess it worked out.
Yeah, it's like both and. I feel like a lot of times with our strengths, there can be positive and negatives. Like you said, the strength of that is you learned how to figure it out, which is a very important skill in life, like being able to figure it out. And sometimes that the dark side of that is you've had to figure it out. So then you probably learn to carry a lot of extra hats, wear a lot of extra hats at the same time. Whereas it's like, oh, wait, you mean there is another possibility of I can get help in this, or there's other ways? And yeah, no, I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Man, this has been such a good conversation. And I'm looking at your time. Yeah.
That's why I have it too. Because
Uh-huh.
I don't know how long we're being here.
Uh-huh.
So it's like trying to be respectful
Oh,
with
yeah,
my
for
guests
sure. For
too.
sure.
Hey, if you have something
That's
going
good.
on at a certain time,
Yeah.
there's a clock there so you
Yeah.
can
Super
keep
helpful.
time,
Yeah. That's
you
super
know.
helpful. I like that. I think that's a great idea. Yeah. Cause I have a coaching call with a client at, let me make sure it's 4. Yeah. Cause originally we were here for 2 to 3, right?
Yep.
Make sure I don't get my time wrong. Yeah. 4. Yeah, we can probably land the plane here so I can get a little time with my wife and kids and prep for that call. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, dude.
Text me all your information so I can
Yes.
put it on the description,
Yep.
and I'll send you the
Just
video
send me
so
the
you
video.
can.
Yeah, give me and before you post it,
Yeah.
like let me package it for
Yeah,
you
for sure.
and see if we can't get you a little boost and because you're posting on YouTube, I'm assuming.
YouTube, Spotify, and Facebook.
Okay, cool. Cool. Yeah, I'm just thinking through the different. Yeah, because what I can do is I can get your email and whichever easiest way to send over the file because I'm sure the
Google Drive.
yeah Google Drive would probably be easy. Yeah, throw it on a drive and then send me a link
Okay.
to the drive. I'll download it, throw it in my software. It's cool because it's got a nice audio boost too. So it'll boost the audio too, and you'll see it. You'll see it pretty clear. Different.
Okay, cool.
So I'll throw that on. I won't edit much. I like the rawness of it. I might see if it generates a cool intro and send it over. If you like it, great. If you don't, then you can just post it how you normally do. But
Okay.
I just want to help you get the
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
yeah for sure because I know what it's like to just like you mentioned, like to just figure it out, and it can be daunting, and to have someone that's been there and can help guide is super helpful.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, man. Dude, it's been such a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
It was great to meet you.
great to meet you. I'm like, whatever, Rasmus. Yeah. I'm like so awkward at endings, like every time. Like sometimes, especially virtually, and then another thing you'll notice again. Here we go. We're back at it. But one quick thing. One thing you'll notice too, the more opportunities you get, the more you'll see it might help to have some kind of system to pre-qualify if they're a good fit, especially virtually, because I've had a few guests that I didn't have a pre-show. And more so the pre-show is literally like 2 seconds to see if they have adequate service when you're doing it online, the setup, And then more so just to see if it's a good connection.
Mhm.
Because I haven't done that. And then you're scheduled for an hour podcast with someone that doesn't know how to banter and go back and forth. So you're spending so much of your time. And here's my question for you. And they're like, it was good. And we're like, great. So anywhere you can help yourself, that's helpful. So you don't get in a position where it's
Yeah, when it's like you,
Mhm.
whenever you send me your link and all your
yeah,
information,
that was super
I was
cool.
like, oh, okay, this sounds interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, but lately, I usually get people that either I know or I find interesting. Like I have a
That
friend,
yeah,
he's
that's
a
so
is a physical therapist.
physical difference.
So he loves to talk about all
Nice.
that kind of
That's cool.
stuff. And that one, it was in Spanish.
Oh yeah, I think I saw that one. I didn't see it, but I went to the Facebook. I was trying to see get a vibe.
Yeah, on YouTube, you can click the subtitle, change it
Yeah,
from Spanish to English,
that's
but
the
not
thing.
on Facebook or
Yeah,
Spotify.
that's tough.
So I was wondering if there's a software that you can translate.
I
Since you,
think so. I want to say Descript has that feature. I don't know if it might be AI generated voices even, but it would literally be like a voiceover in different languages. I know that's out there. Haven't I haven't had to do that yet, but I know that the team that I'm connected with, the main guy is equipping a lot of people. He has a thing called Opportunities for Latinos. Latinas. I'm probably butchering that because my Spanish is bad. But he's essentially helping South American lower income communities learn skills like virtual assistants and editing and fixing websites, and he's providing jobs for them at what seems lower cost for Americans because our price differences, but it's a huge like advance for them. So they're getting great opportunities there. But I say all that to say it's like a lot of their meetings are in Spanish, and or like I'm on their Slack channels and I'm like, Chat GPT translate this. I don't know. I don't know what's being said. So yeah, no, there's definitely things out there that will translate. That's cool.
yeah. So if you,
Something to look for. Yeah, if I
yeah,
see anything, I'll definitely shoot it your way and
yeah, let me
let you know
know
about it.
because it was like either that or making a brand new channel.
Yeah, dude.
So it's like, I really don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
So
That's fair. Dude, this has been a great conversation. Great connection. I'm looking forward to more conversations
and we're like
maybe
15 minutes away. So
literally, yeah. And I'm a text away. Yeah, if you have questions, I'm not gonna be bothered by them. Let it be an open door. If I don't answer, I might be busy, but I'll get to or call me. Like I want to be as available as you would like. Like I'm here. I'm down the road.
all right, cool.
I'm here to help, man. Yeah, man.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
All right.
All right, dude. I'm gonna roll out of here.